Hello, Internet world. This is Artie Astor with a third installment of You Tell Me. And I want to play for you a clip from an excellent interview. Rick Beato is interviewing Joe Bonamassa. Joe Bonamassa goes on to say a few things about improvising. Now, it's important to understand something here. He's not speaking in absolutes, and I'll go over that at the end of this clip. But I do have a very interesting question to ask the audience because I think it matters, especially if you've fallen in love with a studio version of a song and then you go watch the person live. What are your expectations when that happens? And I'll clarify that after the clip. I'll clarify that after the clip. Let's watch this clip of this interview just a little bit right here.
Okay, so one of the things that I love to talk about with my friends, which I don't talk about very often when I interview people, but I'm going to talk about with you, is improvising. Mm-hmm. Because you are a great improviser.
I appreciate that. Unfortunately, that's all I know how to do. It's just how I grew up. I'm a fan of improvised blues-based music, and so when you listen to Clapton playing Crossroads, it's like, I don't think he worked it out. You know what I mean? I don't think he pre-planned that, especially up here. So when you just kind of like, I'm 46 years old, and if you play guitar in the 80s, you had your roads had to go through Eddie Van Halen, you had to go through Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, all those classic people that in my mind were improvisers, Right. And and then you would discover people like David Gilmour, who would be more of a composed solo. But to me, just as a kid with ADD and growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was just more fun to just shred over the blues. And then when I heard Gary Moore, I was like, well, that's the proof of concept. He's doing it. Look at me. I could do the same thing. Not as good.
All right, there are a lot of reasons why I enjoy watching Joe Bonamassa get interviewed, and it's just because he's down to earth. He knows he's amazing. He knows he's a great singer, a great songwriter, and a great guitar player and soloist and improviser, but he does also compose solos. So I said that nothing is as absolute. He's not speaking in absolutes, okay? Gary Moore was a very great improviser, and Jimi Hendrix improvised a ton. In fact, Jimi Hendrix admitted he makes a lot of mistakes because he likes to try stuff out on stage, right? Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton, all really great improvisers. But the interesting thing is, whenever they play a song, if you hear Cold Shot by Stevie Ray Vaughan, it's going to sound like Cold Shot every time. But it does change sometimes. But the main motif, the main hook, everything is there. Most of Joe Bonamassa's songs, when he performs them live, the main hook, the main essence, the main motif of a song, even the guitar solo parts, are still present. There is improvising interlaced where it is appropriate. So he's not saying he goes on stage and sings a song and then every single time it's ready for a guitar solo, he just makes it up on the spot. That's not what he's saying. And I'm sure if you were to ask him, he would tell you that is not what being an improviser is. And then he mentioned Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd, where the guitar solos are pretty much the same every time. So my question to you as the audience, does it bother you if you go to a concert and up is coming the moment for that amazing guitar solo in that song, does it bother you if the guitarist does something completely different, just improvises a completely different guitar solo? Or do you have in mind the studio version that you fell in love with, and you end up being a little disappointed because the studio version of the guitar solo was not played? Sometimes the opposite is true. I can remember, I think it was in the mid-90s, I went to see Tom Petty at Boston Garden. And every song, including guitar solos, was exactly like the studio album. And I remember leaving actually disappointed that there was not as much improvising, that everything was exactly as it was on the album. And I remember thinking, man, I came to watch him live. I expected something different, but it was just like watching the album with him on the stage, you know? So how much does that matter to you? When you go to a concert and you watch someone, does it bother you if the solos, guitar, saxophone, keyboard, whatever they are, does it bother you if the solos are not exactly the way they were on the studio album? You tell me. I would love to hear what you think in the comment section, and I promise I will respond to it. Might not be right away, but I will. Anyways, this is Artie with the third installment of You Tell Me. Check you later.
This river in these mountains